Chapter 7, Characters and Strings, Part 2. Declaring and comparing string objects. A string literal, or a literal string, is any sequence of characters contained in double quotes. A single quotation mark is reserved for one character, but a sequence of characters is enclosed in double quotes. A string variable is an object of the string class. The string class is defined inside java.lang.string, but it's automatically included in every program, so you don't need to import it. To declare a string variable, you start with the word string, followed by the name of the variable. You can also assign it a value by saying, for example, string a greeting equals hello. Notice that hello is in double quotes because that's the string literal that we want stored in the variable referenced by a greeting. You could also declare it the way you're accustomed to declaring objects by saying string a greeting equals new string hello. Notice that we use the keyword new as we typically do when we create objects, but you don't need it. With strings, they kind of straddle a special area between primitive types and abstract data types, and so you don't need the keyword new. You can just assign it a value. A string is a class, and each created string is an object. An object represents a reference variable. That means the location of the values of that object are stored in the variable with the name. For example, a greeting contains an address, and that address is where the actual string is stored. We'll see an example in just a moment. So we call it a reference variable because it references a specific location in memory rather than having the actual value stored at that location. Primitive types are not reference types. Primitive types have the actual value stored at the location represented by the variable name, but reference types all contain an address. So for example, if you have string a greeting equals hello, hello might be stored at address 26040, and 26040 will be in the variable referenced by a greeting. So it's a reference pointing to another location. Also, strings are immutable. That means they cannot be changed. So we could say string a greeting equals hello, and it will reference that hello in address 26040. But if we want to say instead bonjour, a greeting equals bonjour, it creates a new string object in memory and just updates the reference. So notice in the example that bonjour is at location 32564, and our reference is updated rather than changing the existing object. A new object is created. They are immutable. Immutable means it can't be changed. You can make simple comparisons between strings, but it often produces misleading results. For example, if you use the double equals operator, testing for equivalence, it's not testing that the strings contain the same contents. Hello equals bonjour, for example. It's testing that they're stored at the same location, and that is a very subtle but important distinction. So you can't compare the contents of string variables by using the double equals operator. So what you use instead is the equals method. The equals method is part of the string class, and it returns a true if the two string objects contain identical contents and returns a false if they don't. If you don't care about upper and lower case, if you want to know, for example, if you're prompting the user to type in yes or no, and you don't care whether they type it all in uppercase or lowercase, you can use the equals ignore case method that will determine if the strings contain the same contents, but ignore upper and lower case. Treat them both as the same. So for example, if we prompt the user, we have a name equals Carmen, and then we declare a variable called another name. We get input from the user, enter your name. We want to compare Carmen, our preset name, with the name entered by the user. So we say if a name dot equals another name, and then prints out whatever else. So if they're not equal, it'll print out the other. The compare to method is also contained in the string class, and it's used for comparing two strings. It will return a 0 if the two strings have the same value. So for example, if they both contain Carmen, compare to would return a 0. It returns a negative number, or -1, we can often say it returns -1, but really it's a number less than 0, if the first object is less than the second. And what does less than mean when we're talking about strings? It refers to lexicographically, which loosely means alphabetical. So all your uppercase letters come before your lowercase letters, A comes before B, B comes before C, and so forth. So A is less than B, and all uppercase letters are less than the lowercase letters. And compared to a word will return a positive number if the calling object is more than the argument. So if it's greater than the argument, for example, a word dot compare to another word less than 0, what it's asking here is if a word is less than another word, if it comes before it in the alphabet.